Excellent. All right. Well, first off, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm Rob Well, and I'm the co-founder of Datatelligent, and I'm joined today by Brendan Schultz. So we are both very excited to be talking with everybody today about this topic around AI. As you imagine, over the last year or so, with generative coming out, this has been a big topic for a lot of organizations right now, trying to figure out how to use it into their processes and workflows. So we're excited to talk with you today. So for an agenda today, we've got about 45 minutes for our discussion today, and we might use the whole time, we might not, but there's really four learning objectives that we really want you to come out of today with and spending the time. So one is really just discussing the challenges that we're seeing in higher education, whether it is community colleges, four-year public-private, right? There's a lot of common things that we're seeing through the work that we're doing. So super excited to talk about that. The second part is really, what are the use cases? That's a big question we get all the time, like where's their value and where do I apply this to, right, in education. And then I'll have Brendan talk a little bit about what Snowflake's doing to enable organizations in higher ed around AI. And at the end, we'll really talk about some ways that you can get started quickly now if you're at that point. So really, these are the learning objectives that we have today. And if you forget everything about the session today, we're hoping you remember these four things, okay? Couple pointers, the chat will be open during the session, so feel free to drop any questions that are out there. It's a good time. We've got about 76 people that registered for this, so good time to collaborate with any peers, even in this virtual world. And we will be sending out the deck afterwards, okay? All right, so let me get started. So before we get started, just a little bit on this, I want to kind of give a little just 2-second background about Datatelligent, who we are, what we do, just so you understand the lens where we approach things. So what Datatelligent does as an organization is we use data and really AI to make community better. So that's a core value, that's a core purpose that Datatelligent has when we think about AI and data solutions. So we use a unique approach called a data as a service to help really organizations like you remove those barriers, right, to make better business decisions. And from a focus standpoint, we really focus in on 4 key industries. You know, one is really the higher ed, which we'll talk about today, everything from community, technical, public, private, to faith-based institutions, but we're really dedicated on the human services, right, and faith-based organizations, really that underserved and underprivileged markets that we have, okay? So that's where it's at. All right, so just so everybody knows the lens that we look what we look at it for, okay? So then let's talk a little bit about you know, what we see in the market and challenges we see in higher ed for AI. So first is how do I get started? So I think the big thing here for organizations is that, you know, with AI being in every application we have, it's in the world right now, everybody kind of gets AI, right? Like they get it that it's here. They get that they're going to have to use it in their organization. But most institutions that I talk with or hear from is like, man, Rob, we got big enterprise, right? You know, environments, like there's a lot of data, there's a lot of different places we can go. Which ones has the most ROI to get started, right? And where's the value for us to use this for our business benefit, okay? So that's a big trend that we're seeing right now. The second thing is around this topic of resource management, and this is higher ed, but it's also everywhere, is that, you know, data scientists, data engineers, you know, people that you need to really pull this off right now are, one, very hard to retain and keep them busy full time, right? But then the second time is that just in the market, there's just a lack of people that are available right now in the market to support. And higher education organizations are no different in that space. The third thing is really the business impact we're seeing. And it's really what falls to this. We're seeing a lot of organizations right now, like do experiments or start with something right now. But what's happening is like it kind of sticks as a POC or a starting point, but really never gets into, you know, the workflow and to the operations to get that value out of these solutions, right? Where you can use AI in your institution and your organization. So that's a big trend that we're seeing right now on that as well. And then lastly is I'll call it like technology and tools, but it's really, you know, it's that capability, right? And that's that data maturity. So most organizations we talk to, you know, have done stuff, right? They've invested in cloud or a Snowflake, or they have a solution, an analytics solution like a Tableau, right? Where they've done stuff, they've done some investing, they've looked at generative AI, right? Things like ChatGPT and those kinds of things, but kind of go from 0 to 60, and then they get stuck because the maturity is limited, right? They don't have a unified platform, they don't have these tools to do that as well. And so these are really, when we talk to other organizations similar, this is what we're seeing in the marketplace. So again, would be curious any feedback if anybody else is seeing anything else. Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about what I would call the high impact use cases we're seeing in higher ed. And there's really going to be two different kinds of AI that we're seeing. And the first one is I'll call predictive analytics. Okay. Been around a long time. This is your machine learning. This is your guide forward looking. You take all your historical data and move it forward. But there's really 4 spots that we're seeing organizations implement this and get value, and that we're recommending and that we're building solutions around. Okay. So the first one is around admissions and enrollment. And what I'll say with all of these are not like your traditional ones where you're doing forecasting. These are almost like anomaly detection kind of predictive use cases where you're identifying the factors around it. So really, when it comes to admissions and enrollment, what are those factors, right, influencing admissions and enrollment? I went to Concordia, right, and I played football, right? Like, so what are the factors around that makes somebody want to go to Concordia, right, to play football there, right? For example, hot topic for us right now. The second thing is really student success and retention. So once you get the students in, what are those factors, right? There's a lot of factors that are out there, but like, what are those for those factors of your student population where, they're going to stay and they're going to retain and they're going to persist through. So that's a big one. There's a lot of money in that one, a lot of dollars. Like, just think if you could save, 10 students in your organization from leaving, right? What is the value of doing that and giving them the right interventions to go do that? Okay. So that's 2. Third is really graduation rates and program success. I would call it use case 3 for sure. 1 and 2 are probably the highest ones we're helping organizations with. We're building solutions around. 3 is down there. So it's really the factors that drive graduation rates and overall program success. And then the third, or the last one, is really the donor trends, right? Like, where do you target with donors? We had a customer come to us, that has a football team, right? And they are generating a lot of, season tickets, right? And there's a lot of people moving to their areas right now. So how do you get that data, identify those donors, right, where you can target them, right, for contributions on that, okay? So these are really the 4 that we're seeing organizations adopt and use within the higher ed space, and where we're building solutions around and we're recommending, okay? And then the second one is around generative AI from a use case. And there's really 2 use cases we're seeing generative. And just for those that might not know what generative is, if you've heard of ChatGPT, like these virtual assistants, right? There's a lot going on in the higher ed. And really, there's really 2 things from an institution. There's a whole set of like student stuff, like if students are using it, but from like an institution, like where do you use it? So there's a couple things. One is we're seeing it for just like some basic, what I call workforce automation. So think of things like writing stuff. Think of things like your day-to-day. You have to like write an email, write marketing content. You have to write stuff, right? That is like, it's a simple use case. It's an easy use case. Doesn't cost a lot of money to get going. But that's a key use case that we're seeing other higher education institutions adopt. But then really the big one is really around this idea of document search, right? So where people want to go with generative, right, is that for generative is they want to start integrating it with their internal data. And what's the easiest data that you have, right? You have things that already are standard documents. You have Word documents, you have PDFs, right? You have text files, right? So things you can easily connect. And so that's really been the big use case that we're seeing, is how do you connect to those things? And it's like things like training and compliance, those kinds of things, are really the main use cases. Where people want to go eventually from a unified data is they want to connect this to their data platforms. They want to connect it to their, CRM, their donor systems, and they can go that. But then that kind of opens up a lot of the whole data quality and all that kind of stuff. in the organization, right? So most organizations aren't there yet, right? Because they need to increase their data maturity. But these are the two that we're seeing, and we're building solutions around. So that's what we'll cover. So I'll turn it over to Brandon to talk a little bit about what Snowflake is doing here. But I think just from a quick feedback, those are the trends that we're seeing. And those are the use cases that we're seeing get the most value in the marketplace right now. So I'm excited. If you have any questions, drop an email, drop a chat, and we can go from there. Okay, Brandon.
Thanks, Rob. Nice to meet you all, and thanks for joining. So my name is Brendan Schultz. I'm a sales engineer here at Snowflake. Excited to talk about all that we're doing in the AI space, specifically for higher ed in partnership with Datatelligent. So if you're not too familiar with Snowflake as a platform, so we are a software as a service data platform that runs in the three major clouds, which is Google, AWS, and Azure. And we do a whole host of use cases. Today, we're going to focus on AI, but there's a whole host of use cases that organizations drive out of Snowflake. And primarily, as it relates to this conversation, it's hard to have an AI strategy without having a data strategy first. And Snowflake is a platform that sits in between all of your data sources and your data consumers, creating like a golden source of information to start to build products off of. And that's really key when you think about trying to unlock all this AI potential that's in the market. Is first, you need data to do it, and you need quality data to do it. And that's really where we see a huge value add of having a single centralized platform in the middle. Is let's get your data strategy together first, and then let's use the power of AI and all that it can do to drive new insights that you may not have thought about before. But that's kind of, you know, the starting point is get your data strategy first, and then jump into AI. So now getting into AI, today's state of generative AI is, as Rob was saying, very much around the huge large language models that are out there, like ChatGPT, which was built by OpenAI, or the whole host of other ones, like Google has one called Bard. Amazon has their own. There's so many out there that are tremendous AI assets. However, they are hosted externally. So in order to use these assets, typically you bring your data to the asset. So you're bringing your data to the third party, to the AI asset, to be able to generate insights for you. A lot of times that's a non-starter for folks. And the other thing about these large language models, while they are extremely powerful, they are trained off of kind of internet data, publicly available data. And where we see the biggest opportunity in the market is to take this same technology, but bring it to your data, bring it to organizations' data, to be trained specifically on the market, the industry, like higher education, and have really powerful assets that are directly tied to the use cases and the data that your organization works with day in and day out. But the challenge there is where do you host it? And that's exactly where Snowflake comes into the picture. Rob, if you go to the next slide, we are bringing
Brendan, real quick.
Question, Brendan.
Yeah, go for it.
Touching on this is we have a question. It says generative AI is a good topic. How can I make sure my data does not go public?
Perfect. Great question. And kind of right to where we are here is how do you make sure that while you're unlocking the power of generative AI and using these assets, you're still keeping the security and governance over your data? And that's exactly how Snowflake has positioned our product. We are bringing the AI to your data. We're not sending the data outside to the AI. And I'll talk through how we're doing that. But that's a key point for organizations to think about, is how do you unlock this power but keep your data secure? And the way that Snowflake's going to do it is, one, by building first-party world-class AI assets that you can take advantage of directly in the platform. And then I'll talk to it at the end, enable organizations to customize and build and train their own assets. And I'll get into what that looks like. But ultimately, the AI will come into your environment. The AI will come to your data that is inside of your security and governance boundary. So you are then fully confident and know your data has not gone external. It hasn't gone to train a model that's going to be used by someone else. You are the full owner of your data. And that's no different in AI. So our main goal is to do just that, make AI secure, but make it accessible. So we are building first-class features of AI that will lower the barrier of entry for folks to interact with data, folks that may not interact with data on a day-to-day basis through, SQL or Python or other ways that data analytics is done today. So bring this tremendous opportunity to interact with data in a new way, like just talking plain English to your data, which is going to bring much more folks into the fold of driving business insights. And then the efficiency is key too. How do you do this in an efficient way? Bringing the AI to the data rather than sending the data outside will simplify from an operational standpoint where your data is moving, where it's being governed from. And then, so how do we do that? So we have a couple approaches. Rob, if you go one more. So we wanted to lay out a couple options based on where the organization was from a maturity standpoint, where the skill sets were, and really enabling everyone to use AI. So you'll see a couple themes as I go through the next two slides. First is, how can we use AI quickly? Like, how do we really make AI accessible? And that's where there's a whole host of new Snowflake capabilities coming out that bring this power of AI, including generative AI, but also just machine learning algorithms that have been around for a while, but again, making it more accessible. How do we do that in a way that our customers can start to unlock value faster and still doing it in a secure way? But then also giving the options for organizations to do customization, to build applications, in partnership with Datatelligent, to maybe do something more custom for our mutual end customer that may live on as an asset in that company's or in that organization's environment going forward, and all the while keeping the data safe, secure, and governed. So the last slide I'll talk to is all about what are these features that are available in Snowflake for for us, for Datatelligent, and for you as a organization to take advantage of. And again, those kind of three themes of how do we use AI quickly, build AI analytics in seconds, and then how do you build some more custom stuff on the right side of the screen. So first, using AI quickly, Snowflake has developed a lot of AI assets that we're bringing to market. If you look at where we are going with all of our research and development spend, like many other companies, there's so much happening in this space and so much that will continue to evolve. But the way that Snowflake delivers our product is it's one product. As we roll out features, it just gets rolled out into all accounts. So the first couple quick ones, in line with some of the use cases Rob was talking about before, Document AI is a feature that enables you to upload unstructured documents and start to interact with it in plain English. So a ChatGPT-like interaction where you start asking questions about your document and getting extracted answers back to you with scores of how confident the algorithm was that it found the right data for you. And that could really open up a lot of use cases for many people to come in and start asking questions about documents and getting relevant feedback to the user. The other two, universal search is all about finding assets and finding the right information. And then Snowflake Copilot is all around being able to interact with your data in plain English and then have the platform recommend views and queries to run against your data, so that you don't really need to have the skill set to do that data analytics workload, but you're able to drive that value home. And I know, Datatelligent talked about the forecasting. There's a bunch of functions that you can call. So functions are really just kind of a pre-packaged, script or algorithm that does forecasting and anomaly detection. So if you think about, trying to forecast enrollment over time or donors, anomaly detection, trying to figure out, maybe churn and what was different about one student compared to another. And there's so many out there, and we'll continue to roll out more, like summarization of documents, sentiment detection. So, was it a positive, negative type of connotation in the text? So there's going to be a lot that Snowflake and Datatelligent can build for you and do so all in one platform, all in one, secure and governed environment. Rob, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. So any questions so far from anybody in the audience? So we wanted to provide just a quick overview here. So going back to this, couple of things I want to really highlight here, as Brandon goes over that and kind of looks at Snowflake, we're really seeing, where organizations are going right now from a predictive analytics is really focusing in on these kinds of topics, right? So what they're doing, so everybody has kind of a story to relate, is that they have a need to take the disparate data that they have across the organization, put it into a unified platform like Snowflake to enable these kinds of predictions, right? So just so you know, kind of a story to relate of like what others are doing in this space to get value out of these platforms, these tools, these capabilities as well. So that's what we're seeing. And I think the other one too is, from the generative standpoint, this is going to be a big thing for a lot of institutions right now. When we look at other organizations right now, eventually they want to have this vision where they could just like put a question into generative and have that same user experience in the front end. And then it goes into Snowflake, right? Or, to Snowflake, and has that curated data in there to answer all these questions across. So that's really what we're seeing, is it really helps the organization across from their workflows, from their process. And this is how we're seeing organizations really get the value out of these capabilities to drive the growth in their organization and really get adoption around that as well. Okay. So just everybody has a story to relate. All right. So I think as we go through this and as we finish up with Brandon, please drop any questions you have in the chat. But for those, as we kind of wrap up, for those that right now are, just in education mode and they wanted to come to kind of hear what use cases are going on in AI and what Snowflake's, there's a lot of articles that are out there right now. Feel free to, email myself, to Brandon, to Chris. There's a lot of just blogs, white papers on that where you can get educated on it. But for those that are more where they have a very specific need right now in their organization, right now Snowflake and Datatelligent, right, are looking for organizations that want to do a pilot or a project, right? Whether it is around one of the predictions that you have, are looking to do, or if it's around generative AI. So the idea being here is that we would take one of these use cases, right, identify what the success criteria, whether it is in retention, enrollment, we would set up the needed infrastructure within Snowflake to do that, confirm the readiness around the data, because that's really the big thing that organizations are looking for. Identify the functions, identify what we need to use within that, and we'd really go do that. And then we would give you the results, right? And we give you that AI roadmap on where you can utilize this and these capabilities in your organization to get value around it. So, that's where you'd start if you have a particular need, and if this is an area of interest where you want to get jump started right now. Okay.
Rob,
right.
we have another question that came in.
Right.
It said, how can I manage my internal storage and connect to AI generative services?
I can take that, Rob, if you want.
Yeah.
Yes. So you see, thanks for the question. So from a Snowflake lens, if you have internal data storage, Snowflake operates in the three major cloud providers. So the typical process to interact with Snowflake's AI or generative AI services is to bring that data into the cloud, into Snowflake in the cloud. If that internal storage is already in the cloud and you manage it yourself, you could connect Snowflake to that. The big benefit of using Snowflake to manage your data is Snowflake is a fully managed service given to end customers that does all of this cloud orchestration for you, including storage and encryption of your data and security on that data. So there's a whole host of things that Snowflake does from just a storage maintenance, data maintenance perspective that is a big benefit. But if you did have internal storage in the cloud that you manage yourself, you could certainly connect that to Snowflake and take advantage of the services.
Great, good questions. What else? What other questions do people have? We got a group of peers. We got people on, right? Is there any questions or feedback, things you're seeing in yours? We want to talk about, drop it in the chat, drop it in the QA. Wait a minute.
Next question is, how much is the budget for this service?
Yeah. Do you want to take that, Rob?
Yeah, or you can.
Yeah.
As far as go ahead.
Yeah, I can cover it from the Snowflake lens. So Snowflake, given that we operate in the cloud, we are able to take advantage of the utility model of the cloud and offer the utility model of a data platform to our customers. So the way that our service works is you just pay for it as you use it. So there's two main components: is how much data do you put in and store? So there's a storage component that you pay for. And then the other is how do you run analytics off your data? How often are you running compute on that? And that is, again, a utility model like electricity is in your home. Like how long are the lights on? How long is your compute running? And when you shut it down, you stop paying for the compute and you just pay for the storage of the data you have. So you can spin up a Snowflake environment and have a relatively low footprint. We see customers come to us with maybe one use case and have a small footprint, start to understand what Snowflake does, the value that it brings, have Datatelligent kind of build products off of it and see that, and then grow from there. But it's very much a flexible utility model from our perspective. And then Rob, you can kind of cover it from you as well.
Yeah, and then from our side too, I mean, there's really two things, right? We have two subscriptions. We want to meet people where they're at. One is just the unified data platform subscription, right? Where we set up Snowflake, we manage it, right? Have all the data in there, and right, we customize that based upon your needs. And then the second one is the data team. And that really comes in if you need, solutions built, or you need things on top of Snowflake to be able to build. And that could be predictive development, generative development, just regular data analytics development as well too. Is how we do it, and we price that based upon the needs.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. One is, what is the relationship between Azure, AWS, and Snowflake?
Yeah, great question. They are both massive partners of ours, as well as competitors, in a sense that they do offer services and have products that fit in the same world as us. Obviously, data analytics is a very broad market, but I'd say especially AWS and Azure are big time partners of ours. We run all of our infrastructure in their clouds, so they benefit when Snowflake has a customer running in their environment. So most recently, we've actually aligned a lot of our organization's goals to, have us go to market together. And, we've seen that relationship grow. And I see it continuing to grow. So mostly they're big partners, but we run our technology in their cloud.
Okay. And then the next question is, do we need to hire a consultant to help build a budget for Snowflake services, or does Snowflake assist with that process?
Yeah, so we certainly have a process to build an estimation. Really, it's understanding what use cases you're trying to drive from your data. How much data do you have?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And we can build along with Datatelligent estimations for that. Rob, I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, Snowflake is designed to, again, it's a cloud-based tool, right? So yeah, you could stand it up today, right, and go use it, right? I think today we just want to share that, we're helping a lot of organizations and institutions operationalize it. That's where we come in and help organizations. But I think, again, it is a solution you could stand up right away.
Okay, and then the last question is, how would chat AI work for plain language queries about student success?
Yeah, I have some thoughts there. You could do, you could set this up many different ways, but the way that I would see this happening is have a chat AI model / asset trained and trained on your industry and trained on your data available for people to use. So rather than going to a, internet trained asset that is not specifically tailored to your industry and your data, build that or leverage the Snowflake capabilities that we offer, that I covered earlier, and open that up to folks to ask plain English questions on the data. And then the AI asset, which is going to be using this generative, large language model in the back end, would be able to leverage your data and leverage the specifics about your organization and the industry as a whole to bring back the most relevant insights. But again, can set that up in many different ways.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, right? A lot of this in the generative world it's newer, right? Snowflake came out, a lot of the enterprise, right? It's newer. So I think the key thing we're seeing with a lot of organizations is that they want to use generative, but they got to have their data and their data maturity really enabled is the key thing we're saving to take full advantage of all the AI and predictions and generative and all these use cases that we're seeing, right? So that's what we're seeing in the market, and that's what we're recommending for organizations. Great questions, though. It's an evolving market. These are great questions. We're figuring it out. We're figuring it out. Snowflake's figuring it out, right? So I think it's a good feedback. And if you have any questions on that or use cases you're interested in, you can definitely let us know. You have another question, Chris?
Yeah, it's if we do not currently have Snowflake, how long is the project time frame for implementation of Snowflake first and then AI access?
Yeah, great question. Standing up Snowflake's pretty quick, right? If you think of like getting it up and getting your data into it, we're seeing like 3 to 6 months is probably a realistic time frame to set it up. That includes all like your student data. That's like a lot of your data, majority of your data. So you could do that pretty quickly. And then in parallel, I mean, you could take a use case right away today and utilize that in parallel while you're setting it up, right? So that's typically what we're seeing from an organizational standpoint. And typically what we recommend for organizations to get started. And then that gives you the foundation to use all the other things that we talked about today. Great questions. Any other questions?
If anyone else has any more questions, feel free to drop them either in Q&A or the chat.
Got a few more minutes. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, we just want to thank everybody for coming and attending. on this. We've had a lot of requests. There's a lot of interest around this topic. We're, working with organizations to figure it out. So we really appreciate everybody and would welcome any feedback. Like I said, as getting started, if you do just need education today and you want that, please let us know. There's a lot of good websites, a lot of good blogs, a lot of good posts that are out there right now where you can get education. But if you are interested in doing some kind of pilot, right, or solution with Snowflake, we do recommend talking about kind of doing a pilot, right, where we identify one of those use cases and quickly deploy it. So, is that it? We have another question, Chris?
No, it's just someone asking for contact information, so I was sending that separately.
Yeah. So we're about at time. So I just thank everybody. This concludes our presentation. We will send out this deck to everybody. If you do have any questions, either email myself and Brandon. I think Chris put it into the chat around this, and we're happy to schedule additional follow-up meetings to answer any questions or talk about other use cases we're seeing. But just want to thank everybody for their time today.